All right, I want to welcome everyone here tonight to the 2024 CIAC Football Rules Clinic. My name is Dan Scavone. I am one of the executive staff members at CIAC, also the liaison to all the officials groups. And I want to introduce two people tonight. Our first presenter will be Mr. Greg Simon, our Associate Executive Director at CIAC, and also the football liaison. We also have Bill Riccio tonight, who is our state rule interpreter, formerly served on the football committee, very well respected around the country when it comes to the topic of rule interpretations. We're just lucky to have him in Connecticut. You know, Greg and I lean on him an awful lot throughout the season, and he's works really well with all the local interpreters. And he'll talk about who the local interpreters are, because per our guidelines in terms of communication, you know, we ask that coaches and athletic directors seek the help of their local interpreter first. And if something can't be clarified at that point, we move on to Billy, our state interpreter. So I'd like to welcome Greg, and thank you all for attending tonight. Greg, I think you got to unmute.
Just work out more. Great out.
Greg, you got to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for being here tonight. And this will probably be one of the shortest speeches I've given at the start of one of these meetings. Football is in a very good state in the state of Connecticut. Our football committee, at our last meeting, I think the committee meeting went for about 15 minutes long. No arguing, not much of a discussion. We feel like football is in a great place. You know, we've brought about a lot of big changes in the last few years, playing our championships back at college sites, 6 divisions. Obviously this year with the big change to out-of-season, off-season coaching that we've allowed our member school coaches to do. So like I said, there's not a lot. Usually at this meeting, I'm telling you a lot about things that we have upcoming for you. But like I said, it's in a great place right now, and everyone seems to be very pleased with how football is going in our state. So just one quick reminder for you, and we try to do this at the preseason meeting each year, talking to you about being great role models for your student athletes. Again, coaches set the tone out there, spectators feed off it, kids feed off it, and our expectation is that you will be a great role model for your student athletes. We have implemented a new rule this year. This rule came from the Sportsmanship Committee and through the Board of Control, that we are going to enhance the penalty for football or any coaches who are disqualified from a game. Quite honestly, we don't have a lot of problems with, especially the varsity coaches in football. Normally, it's a few sub-varsity coaches that may be disqualified from games, but we really feel that our football coaches do a great job handling themselves and being professional. But the new rule here this year is that there still will be a 2-game suspension, but before you can continue coaching, you will have to take 2 NFHS courses, also pay a $50 fine in order to be able to begin coaching again. And quite honestly, this is just the next step. And if it doesn't solve the problem, we will continue to enhance the penalty until we simply do not have coaches getting disqualified any longer and fulfilling that role model that we're looking for on the field. So again, I'm looking forward to a great football season, and hope everybody is getting off to a great start. And thank you very much for a couple of minutes tonight. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Greg. All right, now I'll turn it over to Billy Riccio, who, just did a rules clinic for all the officials at East Haven High School just this past Saturday morning. And I'd like to also thank Coach Sagnella from North Haven High School, who presented at that clinic. from a coach's point of view, and this is something relatively new, when we have all these officials in the room statewide representing all the boards, in the last couple of years, we've invited a coach to give a keynote presentation and, just to talk a little bit about communication between coaches and officials. And I think it's gotten a warm reception. And I know Coach Stagnell did a nice job. I wish I could have been there. I was in Maine on vacation. Typically, that meeting happens on the first Saturday of August. And this year, because of the college interpretation clinic, it was a week later. So sorry I missed that presentation, but I know it was well received. And Billy, I'll turn it over to you. You got to unmute. Up the audio. You're still muted. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Unmute. How's that?
Here you go.
All right. You can see the presentation as I did it. Okay, it's up. All right.
Yep.
We're going to be very quick, gentlemen. There was only one rule change this year, and it was really just a clarification. Since 2019, there's been a rule in the book that as of this year, the uniforms have to be a dark color. They had to make a rule change, a modification to the rule, because the way it was written, you could have a dark color, but not necessarily the same dark color. So they made that rule change. That was the only one they did all year. They made a few other interpretive changes, but not much else. I'm going to go through those quickly. And then there's going to be some interpretations that Connecticut has discussed and are of importance to you. All right, the first one, of course, as I said, is the jersey. The next one, just for bookkeeping purposes, the signal for illegal use of hands is going to be the same thing as block in the back, or what we've used as block in the back for the last 15 years. So holding is going to be holding, block in the back, or illegal use of hand or arm is going actually back to what it originally was many years ago. It's just a little thing, but something you might want to be aware of. Two things on uniforms. They're very they want us to be very strict this year on proper equipment being worn properly. We've seen over the last couple of years kids wearing second mouth protectors on their chin guards, and what we want is, or what they want is, no extra mouth protectors dangling. And if that happens, we have to get the kid out of the game. And I just want to underscore, if a kid is wearing proper equipment improperly, and I'll talk about this more later, it is being treated as an injury. So it's an official's timeout, and then the kid is taken out for a play. He has to stay out for one play. You can't buy him back with a timeout. And the only exception to this rule is if it's the last play of a half, or the last play of a game before you get into overtime, and then that's the only time you can bring that kid back for the next play. So mouth protectors, just one, because I guess it gets confusing. Officials were actually calling timeout because kids had dangling mouth guards, only to find out that they already had one in their mouth. Again, as far as illegal equipment is concerned, the only metals that are allowed to be taped and not up against the body are religious metals, which must be against the body, and then the medic alert, which can be on the wrist, but they have to be covered. They made some changes on basic spots. All you have to know is penalty enforcement, as it was last year, is exactly the same as it is this year. What happened was they made a few mistakes in the book that the officials caught, and I might have mentioned them last year. And what they did was they revised the section so that it actually does what they wanted it to do. Just a few reminders. Here's what legal jerseys are supposed to look like. You get into uniform adornments, towels. Just let your kids know that there are two kinds of legal towels. One is the 36-inch, usually worn by linemen, and if they use this kind of towel that's shown here, it has to be the logo can only be 2 1/4 square inches. Not that we're going to get a calibrator out there. Just if they have Adidas or some kind of logoed towel, just make sure that it's not all the way down the length of the towel. Reminder again, last year they changed the intentional grounding rule to conform with the way it's done in other levels of football. And the easiest way to say this is only the person who gets the snap, usually the quarterback, can go out of the pocket and then throw the ball out of bounds beyond the line of scrimmage and not be called for intentional grounding. The first year they had this rule, they allowed a pitch play, a halfback option, and if the halfback got into trouble, he was able to throw it. They changed that so that it's illegal. There are going to be 2 types of NFHS authenticating marks this year. This is just for your information. If you buy equipment and it has the old NFHS or the new NFHS logo, it's perfectly legal. We're not going to make a big deal out of it. We just want you to know it, so when you buy your footballs or any other equipment, that it has the proper identification. Under points of emphasis, this is the first time I've ever seen a point of emphasis that is directly pointed at or written for coaches and athletic directors, and it has to do with preventing altercations. There are going to be 2 times that the officials are going to talk to you about sportsmanship or going to talk to the teams about sportsmanship. One is going to be the pregame walk when they talk to the coaches and get the captain's numbers and all that pertinent information. They're going to talk about sportsmanship to you. And then at the pregame, at the coin toss, they're going to talk to the kids. Everything after that is up to you. Sportsmanship starts at the sideline and it finds its way out onto the field. So we're just looking for cooperation in that regard. If there's a fight, what has happened is they've given you an outline as to what the rules committee expects a school to do in the case of an altercation and who should be assigned to what. And it's mostly directed at you. You get rule books every year, and you should take a look at that. The athletic directors at least should get themselves up on what the altercation protocol is. And that includes the post-game handshake. They've even come up with a protocol as to how that's supposed to be carried out. All right, now we get into what we were talking about, and that's player equipment and enforcement. You know as well as I do that as soon as I talk to you about this, ESPN is going to have high school games from other parts of the country, and some of the things we talk about are not going to be followed. But here's what we would like, especially when it comes to pants. The pants have to cover the knee, and they have to have a pad in them. And we don't care if they have a pad underneath, a secondary pad underneath, but the pads have to cover the knees. Kids are seeing on TV, especially the NCAA, and now even the NFL, they're wearing bicycle shorts. And the NFL, they have a sock rule where the sock has to cover all exposed area. So now the socks are up to about their thighs because they're rolling their pants up. We can't do that. It's a safety issue. As far as the NFHS is concerned, this has to be taken care of. We are going to use this procedure. If a kid comes in, and we're going to talk to you, the coaches about this in the pregame walk. If a kid comes in with bicycle shorts on, we are immediately going to take an official's timeout, and he's going to be sent off the field, and he can't play for one play. All right. That player is going to be, his number is going to be put down on the game card of the officials. If he should come back and we find the same problem, it's going to be an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, because what he's doing is he's promoting ill will by not doing what the officials have told him. So we are going to give him an unsportsmanlike penalty, and that's going to be on him, not on anyone else. We don't want to go that far, but it's getting to the point where we keep telling the kids they have to pull their pants down to their knees, their pants legs down, and we're not, in a lot of respects, we're not getting a lot of cooperation. Now, we understand that pants sometimes ride up. So here's what the NFHS has told us, and this is what we're telling you. A pant is legal if in a standing position, the knee pads cover the knees. If the player goes into any kind of a crouch or a stance where the pants ride up, it's still legal. Okay? This was something that I got from the NFHS about 7 years ago, and it's still the case. So we're not going to get to your players if the pants are covering the knee when they're standing, or even if they're not completely covered when they're in a stance. However, we are going to talk about the bicycle shorts, and it's getting to be a problem, and we're hoping that you will help us with that, because again, it's a safety issue. We want to keep the kids safe. I understand, like I said, you could have a game from someplace in the country on ESPN in 2 weeks, and the pants might not be completely proper, but we're trying to do the best we can here in Connecticut. Formations. This is a point of emphasis this year, and all we want you to do is know where players are supposed to be if they're in the backfield or if they're on the line of scrimmage. If they're on the line of scrimmage and they're an interior lineman, they have to break the plane of the snapper's waist. If they're a split receiver, they have to break the plane of the nearest Team A lineman when they're in their stance. Where we get into problems are the split receivers where one is supposed to be in the backfield and one is supposed to be on the line. Here's what we're going to do in the state of Connecticut. We're going to try to legalize as much of that as we can, all right? As long as there's a stagger between the inside receiver and the outside receiver. However, if those receivers are both on the line of scrimmage and it's obvious that they're both on the line of scrimmage, then the inside receiver becomes ineligible by position. And if he receives a forward pass either that hasn't crossed the line of scrimmage or has crossed the line of scrimmage, that's illegal touching of a forward pass by a lineman. Okay, that would be 5 yards from the previous spot and a loss of down. So while we're going to do everything we can to legalize a stagger, there's not much we could do if two kids are up at the line of scrimmage and they're basically in the same spot, only about 7 feet from each other. The other thing that we're going to be looking for, and this is going to make what I just told you a little more difficult, is if there's trips to one side and you have a tight end on that side, then we have to be a little bit more strict than we would ordinarily be. And we talked about this at the state clinic. So while there might be a stagger, we're going to require a little bit more. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to the kids. Hey, my foot is up on the line of scrimmage. That's what the wing guys are going to do. If you're on it, get up to it. We don't want to coach. It's not our job. That's what you do 7 days a week. we're only there for 2.5 hours or so. But what we want to do is legalize everything and make sure that the defense knows who's legal and who's not. And that's all I'll say on that matter. Any questions? All right. That's it as far as the NFHS PowerPoint is concerned. There's a couple of other things I want to talk about. We talked about defenseless player on Saturday and how we're going to call it in Connecticut, and we're pretty consistent with the way they're calling it all over the country. Under the new edited 332.16 rule, I quote, "A player is no longer defenseless once a player's physical position and focus of concentration no longer makes the player especially vulnerable to injury." Now, this really has to do a lot with defenseless player, non-defenseless player. What you have to know is a ball carrier is never defenseless, but the time that he becomes a ball carrier, a receiver, let's say, to the time he becomes a ball carrier can be a gray area where where he is defenseless, and that's where we as officials have to protect him. So the prime example is a receiver who makes a leaping catch and he alights to the ground. He's given 1 step and then 2 steps. The second step is where we're calling him a non-defenseless player, a ball carrier, okay, or a runner by definition. If he receives the ball and alights and gets hit, if that hit is illegal, i.e. not hands out, head up, and he's hit with the body or the shoulder or the helmet, he's a defenseless player. That will be a foul. If after he hits the ground and he takes 1 step and that happens, we're going to foul it. If he takes a second step, complete step, we're considering that where he has his total focus of where he's establishing his run. So once he gets hit there, he is a ball carrier. This is consistent with the way it's being called all over the country. And this is the way we're going to call it in Connecticut. We did last year. It's not really a change. It's just they changed their definition, and I wanted to make sure that we understood it. Runners are never defenseless. They can be hit as long as the hit is legal under the rules. And remember, we have that rule about blindside blocks and defenseless players. As long as that hit is hands out, heads up, we're really going to have 99% of the time, we're not going to have a problem. The only time we're going to have a problem with that is if the kid is 20 yards behind the play and some kid decides he's going to hit him regardless with you, either with the body or with the hands out, heads up. That's just hitting a player out that's obviously out of the play. That's not a problem, or that's not under consideration under this rule. Same thing for blockers being defenseless or other players being defenseless. We've taken a new position as far as how we're going to help call that. And we've decided, just on your own, put your arms out at 10 and 2. That is about the periphery of your vision. So that's where, if a kid sees a kid coming at 10 and 2, he's going to be able to ready himself for that hit. If he sees it outside there, we're going to call that a blindside block. And that goes depending on how the play moves. That's how we're going to call it. That's really how we've been calling it, but we really established for the officials in the state, we established a protocol, and it's just going to make it easier for calls to be made. Please, going back to formations just for a second, if you have a bow back, we're finding that sometimes teams are coming out and their formations look like a Blue Angels formation. That's not legal. and you gain a definite advantage by having a bowed back line. So please help us out. If we tell you, Coach, this line doesn't look good, you're going to have to help us move this up, move these players up. We're looking for you for help, and we really want to get this done, because if a kid is bowed back, if he goes into pass coverage or pass blocking, he doesn't really have to make a step other than pivot his body, and that's a definite advantage, not meant for by the rule. Complete, incomplete catch. We're going to use the same principle that we used for the defenseless player. If an airborne player comes down and alights to the ground and takes one step after alighting, gets hit and loses the ball, that's incomplete. It's after he takes a second complete step and he gets hit and then he loses the ball, that's what we're considering a fumble. And that's pretty much the interpretation throughout all levels of football that I know. When in doubt, it's going to be incomplete. Also, we had a couple of situations last year where films were sent to me where we had a toe heel catch in the back of the end zone. If there's such a thing where an airborne player touches on his toes coming down, and then his heel touches the back line or the sideline, if it's along the sideline, that's an incomplete pass. That is not legalized until the alightment of the foot is complete. And that's the way we're going to call it. All these things that I'm telling you are going to be put out in a bulletin this week, with a lot of other information. Just one more thing, just to make you aware. Last year, if you remember, the first or second week of the season, we had a lot of problems with lightning and thunderstorms, and some teams were waiting a long time. We made a proposal. The football officials made a proposal to the CIAC, and it's been accepted. So this is the standard that we're going to have. And I'm going to just read it to you and try to explain it. A delay or combination of delays should exceed no more than 90 minutes total, calculated from the time the field is cleared initially to the time the most recent delay is begun. Now that includes, just to make it simple, a straight 90-minute delay or an aggregate 90-minute delay. So in aggregate, if you have a 30-minute delay, you bring the teams back out, and just after you bring the teams out, we have another thunderstorm or another set of lightning, and we have to put everybody back. Now, while the 30 minutes starts up again, it goes into aggregate time, and we're adding that so that if it reaches 90, by mutual consent of the teams, okay, they can determine to come back the next day. What we don't want is what happened last year with teams that are going cross-state in these alliance games, and then all of a sudden they have to come back another long bus trip, and things get and I get calls from officials as far as how long they're supposed to wait. All this is supposed to be done with the coaches and the athletic directors in communication with the officials. All the athletic directors have the weather apps that they that will help us make those determinations. And what we don't want kids who went into school at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now it's 10 o'clock and we're asking them to play football. Now this is not necessarily what we're going to do for Saturday morning games or Saturday afternoon games, but this would be strictly for night games, and it could be for matinees, if you will, if it's by mutual agreement of the coaches. The question comes up: what happens if we have a 90-minute delay and the coaches decide they're not going to come back? They're just going to take the score of the game, and we've only played the first quarter or part of the first quarter. Well, we had that last year. We actually had a situation where at the end of the first quarter, it was 44-0. And the referee called me, and under 314, by mutual agreement of the teams, the game could be stopped at any time, and it will be considered an official game. We don't have like baseball with 4.5, 5. We don't have that. If by mutual agreement of the coaches, the game can be stopped at any time, and the score is considered the official score of the game. That really completes my presentation, gentlemen. A lot of this will be in the bulletin that goes to all the coaches and athletic directors, and all the officials in the state. And if you have any questions, just send them to me, and I will try to answer them as best I can.
Thank you, Bill. And that lightning policy, by the way, was approved by the CIAC football committee very recently. So thank you for the well-written proposal on that as well. So that concludes the rules portion. I just want to say that I know as we've gotten out of COVID, many of our leagues are getting together in person again, and I know the ECC coaches did have a rule interpretation meeting at their most recent meeting, and like the FCIAC coaches are all together, combining this with their preseason meeting. So as we move to more in-person meetings, remember, we just ask head coaches, we make it mandatory, you have to attend some type of rules clinic given by an interpreter. What we like about this clinic is, number one, it's presented by our state rule interpreter, who gets it firsthand knowledge right from the Federation interpretation meeting, and Bob Colgate, who's the liaison to football. And secondly, it allows Greg Simon to talk a little bit about what's going on in the football committee, which we didn't have too much this year. And then thirdly, we record this. So if I successfully recorded this, this will be posted on the football main page of our website. Give us about a week to get it posted. And this way you can refer to it as needed, and certainly encourage your assistants to view it as well. So if there are no questions, and I don't believe there are, I'll look in the chat. And if there are no questions, we can conclude, and I really appreciate everything you've done. And I know this year we scheduled this meeting prior to the OTA starting, so it gave you an opportunity to really plan. So good luck with your OTAs and good luck with your season.
And I have a quick question. Being now that we're allowed to practice over the summer, is there a discussion that the OTAs is just going to become like practice days? I mean, it's kind of silly that we can't have any. We've been practicing like all summer, then like we're supposed to be limited on conditioning sort of stuff on the OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first year for the out-of-season coaching change. So there's a lot of things that have to be thought out in terms of how it's affected other aspects, especially the fall season, obviously. But right now, I think the OTAs were a way of allowing the season to start a bit earlier and not have to waste days on, handing out equipment and getting all the organizational stuff in order. I think that's something that the football committee would have to take up. Our proposal system is pretty simple, where any principal, any league, a Connecticut High School Coaches Association, as well as the Connecticut Association of Athletic Directors, can make proposals. Those proposals go first to the standing committee. So right now, because everything is brand new, there has not been any talk of that, to answer your question.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, well, then have a great year. And again, Billy and all the interpreters are there for you should you need them throughout the year. Let's hope we get some good weather as well. Take care.